Welcome back. I am author and illustrator Dani Lebeaux. Today we will continue the reading of Adam 3:15, written by myself, Dani Lebeaux. We will be joined from this point forward in this podcast by the lovely Kat Michelle from the Twilight Cottage, who will be voicing the role of Cassandra Reynolds. So, without further ado.
Session 1. Interviewer name, Cassandra Reynolds, journalist for Washington Post newspaper and special columnist for Al Jazeera International. Second interviewer and consultant, Dr. Stephen Malcolm of the Boston College Institute for Scientific Research and Advancement, specialization in structural biochemistry, published author and Nobel laureate. Interview subject,
Adam Godwin.
The time is 11:47 p.m., March the 21st, 2024. Location, personal offices of Cassandra Reynolds, Washington, D.C. Several weeks ago, I was contacted via email message by a man calling himself Adam. After some degree of correspondence and initial questioning, I have decided that his case is worth further investigation, if only for the story behind why a man would make such claims. 5 days ago, as agreed between the subject and myself, after many precautions and assurances, I received a package containing 2 small vials with instruction to forward one of them to a Dr. Stephen Malcolm of Boston College, with explicit intent for their study. Following further instruction, I extended my personal invitation to the former, that after he had taken time to evaluate the properties of this substance, he might participate with my investigation into its origins. The day after delivery confirmation of said package reached my email, the doctor agreed. This documentation begins at the arrival of Dr. Stephen Malcolm, subject Adam formerly present. Our latest arrival had knocked briefly before I called for him to enter the room from behind my desk. The raise in my voice made my subject wince in surprise, and I felt somewhat guilty for my lack of professional courtesy. As Dr. Malcolm entered the room, Adam was already out of his chair, still facing me but standing all the same. For the first time since his arrival, I was able to accurately gauge the height difference between me and my new acquaintance. With no exaggeration, he easily stood above me by at least 70 centimeters. I watched anxiously for the doctor's reaction as Adam turned to face him. However, at first he paid no mind to us, aside from to halfway acknowledge that we were in fact present at all, proceeding instead to close the door behind him and turn the lock without asking. It was quite interesting to see a renowned scientist walking into the room in a baseball cap, but it matched his outfit of shorts and a t-shirt, which I found odd for a chilly day in March. However, I considered that the nights had felt warm as of late, especially more so, I assumed by comparison to Boston itself, as I recalled from online that they were still experiencing snow just days before. The doctor removed his hat to hang upon the coat rack by the door before finally turning in our direction, yet he still did not look at us directly, instead busying himself with his head downward as he approached quickly, tussling his medium brown hair to remove any trace of hat head. Dr. Stephen Malcolm. He was every bit the individual I remembered meeting in Geneva. An athletic and somewhat boyish man for his age, who looked equally the part of baseball coach as he might a scientist. Possibly a bit aloof and perpetually casual, he was also quite kind and approachable, even while discussing matters of technicality that most would find boring or impenetrable coming from anyone else. I recalled his mention that he had originally studied to be a physician before research turned his head, and felt that it might have suited him well if for no reason aside from what seemed to me a natural way about him which might have been the perfection of bedside manner. His hasty and single-minded entrance were not out of character, I thought, but locking the door seemed a bit presumptuous. It wasn't until he nearly bumped into Adam's chest that he finally looked up to greet us. His head leaned back as he craned to look towards Adam's face. Startled, he stepped backward, at once offering his apologies as he extended his hand in introduction. In my head, I had to laugh when he stopped short to do a double take. That was the reaction I had been waiting for. Desperately, I needed to see how someone else responded to the giant figure that stood before us. To my chagrin as well as admiration, he paused only for a moment with his eyes wide and mouth open, before he advanced his arm the rest of the way with quick but unquestioned recovery, even though his words came out in clear surprise to even himself.
Dr. Stephen Malcolm.
Adam took the doctor's hand in both of his own, engulfing it as if it were the extremity of a young child. He also bowed slightly as he gave the doctor a gentle yet firm shake, a gesture which we had bypassed upon first greeting. I now felt regret for skipping this, as it seemed to mean a great deal to the large man.
Thank you, Doctor, for agreeing to meet with me this evening. I'm Adam.
Stephen leaned slightly to his right to look towards me with obvious confusion. I removed my hand from my mouth only long enough to give a quick wave, but had to place it back near immediately to prevent actually laughing aloud. Hi, Stephen. As Adam released his hands from around Stephen's and stepped to one side, I decided to correct my previous error and reached over my desk to shake his hand myself. The feel of his skin was warm and soft, dry but uncalloused, and the shake it gave was both firm and heavy, without tightness. So now that we're all here, Stephen, there is tea over there on the table if you'd like some, and you have your pick of seats. He chose to skip the tea as he headed towards the small leather sofa to my left of the room. It put him ever so slightly behind Adam in relation to myself, but it seemed an appropriate placement. However, neither him nor Adam seemed ready to be seated just yet. Stephen turned back towards us, slightly rocking on his heels, hands in pocket.
So, you're the man responsible for the liquid gold?
He smiled jokingly.
I gotta tell you, I am incredibly curious to find out the story behind this stuff. I don't know how much Cassandra has told you, but I've been running it through at the lab, and it's absolutely amazing. No one's ever heard of anything like it. We can't even identify the suspension fluid, but the contents on a cellular level, it's mind-blowing.
It was at this point in the conversation where Stephen stopped short and became serious. His demeanor changed from excited to suspicious.
Just who are you, Adam? And how is it that someone I've never heard of has come up with this? Surely if you produced it, then Cassandra wouldn't have approached me.
I turned towards Stephen, my own expression dropping into the weight of the question's inference without balking at the seeming absurdity of the obvious omission to the conclusions to be drawn by Adam's very appearance. Before we actually start with the rest of the questions, I think you may want to prepare yourself, Stephen. I decided it was the right time. Dr. Malcolm's insistence on objectivity without assumption called for directly demonstrative evidence to confirm Adam's claims about the strange liquid contained within the vials. Adam and I had previously agreed upon this course of action after my first response from the doctor had come through, but admittedly, up until actually meeting him in person just moments ago, I had reserved for myself the right to back out of this plan. However, now, as the time had come, it was my confidence and trust in my subject's authenticity that compelled me to follow through. Adam, I was certain at this point, was if not entirely sane, then at the least likely honest about the contents of the vials he had sent, and the actions to follow were important. We had to show the doctor firsthand if we expected even the slightest benefit of the doubt. I walked to the side of my desk and removed a letter opener from the top drawer. I looked at him in the eyes, handed it over, and nodded. He understood. Dr. Malcolm seemed very evidently concerned to see the large man now holding a sharp object, and he looked worriedly towards me in object confusion. However, I believed that this show of trust was necessary. We proceeded. I rolled up my right sleeve and extended my arm, palm up, towards the giant in front of me. We met eyes once more as he took my arm in one hand. Adam was entirely gentle, as expected, but I braced myself nonetheless. We shared a silent confirmation with one another as the doctor looked on. I did not close my eyes nor wince as he sharply stabbed into my forearm. I felt the letter opener pierce my skin deeply. It was no worse than an immunization round, but I thought for a moment that Dr. Malcolm was going to lunge at Adam if I did not gesture otherwise. It was such a protective stance that I determined this to be merely the doctor's nature rather than any personal feeling for me. So I turned towards him with assurance as Adam removed the small blade and the doctor stood down. I folded my other arm over in order to place 2 fingers over my fresh wound as Adam turned his palm outwards towards Dr. Malcolm as if he were a stage magician demonstrating the emptiness of his sleeves. I could swear a small smirk played across his face. However, he seemed entirely professional about the ordeal, much more collected, in fact, than the scientist whom I was certain would object at any moment. After this, Adam brought his hand back towards his own body and closed it around the blade of the letter opener. It was a swift motion that I am sure cut him much deeper than it had myself. He quickly reached behind me to lay the letter opener once again on my desk, and I turned my body to allow him easier access to me, while motioning with my head for Dr. Malcolm to come closer. "It's quite all right, Stephen. You will want to see this." His inquisitiveness as a scientist seemed to take the lead, and he walked towards us. I held out my arm once more and removed my fingers as he leaned in to inspect. Blood flowed from the wound slowly as the pressure was released. He looked up towards me.
Why?
His questioning was cut short as Adam opened his palm, revealing the yellow liquid that was his blood. The doctor looked up at him and then back towards me in disbelief, but we spared no time in proceeding before he could ask a word. Again, Adam gently took my arm in hand. I nodded approval once more, and with that he moved his gashed palm to me and lightly pressed it over my open cut until I felt the wetness of his blood mixing with my own. As he slowly removed it once more, even I was in awe to witness what I felt confident would happen next. It was not like a scene from a movie. There was no retraction of my blood or instant cleaning of the wound. Instead, what transpired was like watching a construction in time-lapse. The cut didn't just close, but rather seemed to stitch itself back together with the growth of new skin. It didn't burn. It was not truthfully painful at all, just a slight itch that quickly dissipated. Something else did take place that I could not explain, however. Adam no longer looked as a stranger to me, but as a friend. My worries had melted off, and somehow I felt different than I had before, like I had known him for years. It was all like this was the most natural thing in the world, and I had been crazy to have ever doubted the giant who offered such a gift to my person. Within seconds the wound was gone, healed over without scar, as if it had never happened. Adam opened his palm upward to reveal that the same had occurred on his own hand, in equal or less time. Dr. Malcolm's jaw dropped, his eyes wide with an expression I have found usually reserved for children. He spoke with a quieted sense of awe.
Holy shit. No offense intended, but what the fuck did I just watch? How is that possible? It's in you. It's your blood. If you would be seated, Doctor, I will answer all of your questions.
I smiled and leaned my waist back onto my desk as I gestured for the doctor to return to his seat before standing again to walk around and pull out my own chair. Adam and I took our previous seats as Dr. Malcolm returned to the sofa by the wall. He staggered a bit as he walked, turning around partially at least 3 times, as if to ask a question, before turning back quickly to continue towards his intended place of rest. It reminded me of watching my grandfather forgetfully shuffling from room to room, trying to remember what he was looking for when I was younger. I did not actually know what was going through the doctor's mind, but while I felt he may be momentarily suspended in his amazement and disbelief, I also knew all the more to expect heavily a remaining skepticism once we began.
Thank you for listening. Come back for more.